Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you in another video. All right, we didn't talk about the Jackson Hayes conversation as it pertains to my real opinion about what happened or whatever. I got into what was reported, and I didn't break down the video. I don't think breaking down the video is probably in my best interest because I didn't see it directly from TMZ. I saw it in splices on other people's channels and stuff like that, so I may have missed something. I think there's maybe about 5 or 6 minutes worth of footage. But, as a Laker fan, man, I just hate to see a player kind of throw his career away. That's what comes to mind. And then, of course, furthermore, I think it's responsible for anybody who has a platform to say that they don't condone that behavior. And I'd like to think that over the last 3 years, he may have gotten some help for himself. Obviously, they had the reports out that said that he had to do some type of classes of some sort. I don't know if it was anger management or anything like that. I'm not really sure exactly what he had to do, but he was responsible for meeting some expectations lawfully in regards to that. So hopefully that provided him the help that may be necessary there. But I say that I'm from the old school where I believe that men should keep their hands off of women. Obviously, as you grow into the era we're in, women should too keep their hands off of men, but that wasn't necessarily how I was raised. I'm gonna be honest with you. The way I was raised, like, you could probably expect if you do something, a woman's probably gonna try to hit you or something like that. Like, you can expect that. You know what I mean? That's the way I was raised. Like, you just got to be ready for the restraint. When she starts hitting you, you push her off you. But you don't put a ball fist or a raised hand to a woman. And if you are strong enough of a man, you even keep your voice down. You don't argue with a woman. When she starts all that arguing and bickering, you get the hell up out of there. That's the kind of, like, values I was raised with. It might be a little strange in today's era where the lines between genders are a bit more sophisticated, and people tend to lean into the rights of a man, you know what I mean, and men have most definitely a right to not be hit and all of that. And women in this era, as identified as however they are, may be inclined to play men's sports or however that goes, vice versa. So it's like we're just in an era where you gotta leave more room for both sides to be considered equal, rather than one side being considered stronger than the other. And so I just have to evolve with that, and I think that I've done a good job of doing that thus far. But the way I was raised, by the woman I was raised, is you don't let no woman put her hands on you, but you definitely don't put no hands on her. Not necessarily hit her back, but you protect yourself. And if a woman's trying to take your life, then you have a right to defend yourself in whatever way possible. All bets off. You know what I mean? That kind of thing is how I was raised. But otherwise, you keep your hands off a woman, and you don't give her no reason to put her hands on you. Play the game fair, she said. If you have a domestic situation, don't be going around cheating and stuff. You know what I mean? Play the game fair. If you want to be open, be open. But don't be so selfish as to, put yourself in a position to think that you can do whatever you want and there ain't going to be no consequences with a woman. And so that's kind of how I was raised, man. It's a different world. My mother was from a generation behind the generation that was on average having given birth to my age. My mom was like 38 when I was born. So, she comes from an older school than what a lot of people my age were raised with. So that kind of thing is just a little detached as far as myself and how I think. I still believe a man should be a man regardless if a woman identifies as a woman or a man. You know what I mean? When I see someone who may identify as a man and I identify them as being born a woman, I treat them with a certain level of respect. As to say, I'll open a door for them or let them go through or not put my hands on them if it's a situation. Even though they see themselves as men and they demand I do as well, I don't. Now, when it comes to stuff like that, I'm not going to treat you the same way I treat somebody who was born with male anatomy. I'm just not. I don't know how to, honestly. You can tell me I need to work my mind into being that way, but I ain't gonna feel right. My mom got to me early enough in my life to say, you treat a girl with a certain respect that, that a man's probably not gonna be afforded. It just is what it is. Not to say he's not gonna get his respect, but I'm not opening the door for a dude. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean? That's not gonna be that. But, and I may fight a man, you know what I mean? I can put my hands on a man if it comes down to it. You don't want to put your hands on nobody, but if a man wants to start a fight, I'm not pushing him off of me. I can defend myself however men do. And if you identify as a man, but you were born with women's genitals or whatever, and I'm able to identify that, I'm not gonna fight you. I'm not gonna treat you like a man. I'm sorry, not in that way. Not in that way. And so that's the unfortunate nature, I guess, of the difference in between how I was raised versus how people want people to act right now. You know, this is what it is. I don't know how to not be that way. And based on the positive things that come from continuing to keep those ideals, I'm not interested in putting them down. I feel good about myself when I treat women a certain way. That's how indoctrinated that behavior was into my household. And then my mother put that in me in she instilled that in a very serious way. Like, you know, you make sure you treat a lady like a lady whether she see herself as a lady or not. And that's just what I was taught. And so, you know, I believe that that's a good way for me to represent myself, but at the same time, I do want to listen to others say, yo, don't treat me like a lady, because I ain't identifying as a lady, and I want to be in the environment where I'm most respected. And I'll just say, well, in that case, I'll do my best, and, you know, I'll do my best. That's the best thing I can say. But if it comes to a conflict or something like that, I'm not about to square up with you. If I identify you as a woman, or in the most unfortunate of spaces, if you identify yourself as a woman and you're a man, I'm not going to afford you that. I will defend myself. I'm not going to look at you just because you have feminine identity, or female identity. If you're a man and you have the same thing going on with you that I have in my pants, bro, you're a man, bro. As it pertains to how I'm gonna treat you, and that's the reality of it. There'll be people offended with that, but I'm not there. That's not how I operate my life. And furthermore, I think it's my responsibility, as confusing as it may be in today's world, to try to intervene if I see a feminine man trying to fight a woman. Even if that woman thinks she's a stronger entity or may identify as a man, I'm still going to think it's my responsibility to protect that for which was born female. I was wired, man. So I'm wired. So that can get strange in this world. But, you know what I mean? I just want people to understand, like, with all of those things being said, I think Jackson Hayes, as a identified man, dealing with a identified woman, a real born genetic woman, needed not to behave that way based on the ideals that I was raised with. He needed to not act like that. He was lacking someone in his life that taught him how not to be that way. And that's really what it comes down to. If he's acting like that, then he's going to find himself in a situation where the consequences fall on him. And while it's a lot of people who are starting to adapt to the idea that men and women are equal, the powers that be, the ones that control the country he's in, they're from the old school. And that's what people need to understand. They're trying to adapt to you, but a lot of them think what you're doing is silly. And they control the laws. They control a lot of what it is that happens to you when you behave a certain way. So that's why I think it's most definitely also safe to keep the ideals that I have, that men should, carry themselves a certain way. If they were born with certain genitalia, you carry yourself a certain way. Whether you identify this or identify that, it's still within your responsibility to adhere to these responsibilities to protect women. That's what I was taught, And so I'm running with that. And I think Jackson Hayes kind of betrayed that in a way. Not to say that I was able to see everything going on in the conversation there and what was going on there, but I did see him grab her and spit in her direction. That's not energy that I need to see from a man toward a woman. That's what I would say to him. I don't respect that. I don't respect that. And I don't doubt that maybe sometimes women will provoke you and you might act out of character, as we said in the previous video. Sometimes those imaginary things that are supposed to keep people in line don't do that. It's about temperament and how much someone adheres to those imaginary lines, such as rules and morals and things like that. At the end of the day, it just comes down to temperament. People will crash out. People will just say, forget all of that, and I'll deal with the consequences later. And so you guys, I would tell every woman, like, don't provoke a man, because you don't know if he's going to adhere to those imaginary lines or not. How you doing, brother? You don't know if he's going to adhere to those imaginary lines or not. You don't know if he cares about the law today. You know what I mean? You don't know. And so while you thinking you're protected because you're a woman, he wouldn't dare hit you, or you're going to risk his career or whatever, threaten his career if he does, or sue him and take all his money from him. Maybe you catch him on a day where he's just not really protecting against all of that, and then it's just you and him. And so that's why I tell people, that's been the theme of the day. Don't think those imaginary lines are going to protect you. Give yourself distance between people who have problems with you. If you can't defend yourself from them, don't be around them. Get out of that circumstance if at all possible. And if it's not possible, then you need to start finding a way to make it possible. You got to start devising ways to get away from abusive people, regardless of how they identify or what the role is. Men get brutalized by women too. Men, you know what I mean? Mental abuse can lead to physical abuse at times too. If a person has a mental hold on you or control how you view yourself by way of what they say, it can turn into physical abuse if they have that much power over you. So we just got to protect against that type of stuff. When you start seeing yourself, dealing with somebody with them red flags in regards to them being abusers, you may want to get out of there early before it gets to a point where you don't feel you can, or maybe you just ain't able to see those red flags, but they're there. And maybe listen to somebody who may be telling you, hey, they're there, we see them. Instead of shunning those people and just writing them off as not happy to see you happy type stuff, you know what I mean? Adhere to that. And I'll tell you something else. For what it's worth, pay attention to your animals. I saw a post yesterday of a girl that I see all the time on my page. And she took a picture of her animal scowling at her boyfriend. And I just, maybe it was nothing, but I ain't hear to something like that. She wrote in the post, like, why is my dog scowling at this dude? I'm like, I don't know. And this ain't a perfect science by any stretch of the imagination, but I would definitely heed the signs. So a lot of times dogs are watching while human beings don't think they're watching. And maybe what he saw or your dog saw, he didn't like. Maybe he sees something in that dude that you can't see because you're feeling him and in love with him or whatever. But I would tell you, if your dog consistently can't stand this dude, that should be something that you use as a tea leaf that you should pair with other signs if they're there. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm telling you. Just sometimes animals sense things that human beings can't, especially if it's with a spouse that you desperately in love with. For all you know, your animal saw him do something that you don't know he did. You know what I mean? Your animal saw how he was looking at you when you wasn't looking, and he didn't know the dog was looking. You know, that kind of thing. You just gotta, one thing about an animal, he gonna protect who feeds him. And so, if that animal loves you to death and hates somebody you around, I ain't saying that's a sign that person needs to get the hell away from you. I'm just saying that's one of many tea leaves that probably come together to give you an understanding if that person's any good or not. And that's my thinking. So pay attention to those type of things. They do provide a lot of, they provide an environment for which provides hints. Your environment will provide hints. And that's what I tell people. So yeah, man, all in all, kind of got off subject a little bit as far as this Jackson Hayes thing, but I have a bit more of a different approach as it pertains to the conversation, because I just look at him as a young man. And sometimes young men just don't do a good job of representing themselves very well, depending on how they were raised. If you didn't have it instilled in you that you're supposed to handle certain things a certain way, in regards to women, then sometimes you're just going to act like a little boy until you grow up. And a lot of times it takes men a long time to grow up. It requires this type of action, this type of circumstance for them to grow up. I will say that Jackson Hayes, he behaved as if it's normal for him to behave that way. as a lot of people we see on camera in these domestic situations look like. The way that she was reacting to him, it was one of two things that went through my mind. Either he do this all the time, or she's setting him up because she know the cameras is on, and she has every intention of suing this man and doing exactly what we're seeing here. That was one of the two things that came to mind. And I have a difficult time with the notion that I'm supposed to believe all victims, because sometimes people literally lie on people. You know what I mean? But what I can say is, as I think about it and I give thought to it, the notion that you should believe victims first with the open mind that they could potentially be lying, which technically ain't fully believing them, but at least providing them the benefit of the doubt, maybe is the most responsible way to go, because so many people are complaining or afraid to tell the truth or about who's doing what to them. And so when someone comes forward, a lot of times it requires a great deal of courage. So if I'm walking around with my skepticism, leaning into the pessimism of those who would otherwise be lying about what happened to them, I may turn away somebody who genuinely needs help in the moment. And so there needs to be some space of mind to apply to those who are telling you whatever they telling you, to say, yeah, anybody could be lying about anything, but right now the most responsible thing for me to do is absorb their information and apply it as if it's true, so as to cover the notion that, you know, this person may be in danger, or to cover the notion that this person may be getting abused and that abuser could be abusing someone else. Then if it proves that they're a liar, have it already in your mind that everybody is capable of sinning in some way, and a lot of people are liars, you know what I mean? But to react as if a abused person has been abused is probably the most safe way to play it. I guess that's what I'm saying. Because I do have a hard time with that. I don't like, in fact, I'm halfway offended by the notion that I'm wrong for believing everybody who says anything about anybody else. Just because you came up with the idea that you want to smear this person and say that they're an abuser, now I'm a bad guy for thinking that you could potentially be lying. Based on this believe all victims culture, I don't think it does a good enough job of explaining to a person like me what my responsibility is. It just gives me something to rebel against in regards to you telling me to believe everybody when I done met so many liars in my damn life. That's not the responsibility I hold. The responsibility I hold is to make sure I cover all bases, is to not let someone who's abused, who's coming to me, walk away and further get abused because of my skepticism. And that skepticism of liars is always in place. But the need to act in the moment in regards to somebody who's been abused is much more sensitive than my notion of being right about somebody who could potentially be lying about something and lying on somebody else. You know what I mean? It's not a perfect science. Either somebody's lying or not, and somebody's gonna get hurt one way or another. But the person who's been accused, it becomes a very difficult situation. But the lesser of the two evils, in my opinion, is to be wrong about someone being accused being guilty than someone being accused treated as if they were innocent when they are guilty, if that makes any sense. I think the worst situation for all is a person who's being abused ending up dead or ending up in a worse abusive situation, having come to help, ask for help, than what trickles down from somebody being falsely accused. And you know what I mean? That's what I think is the lesser of two evils. Obviously, a person being accused falsely holds a great deal of consequences that are horrible for them. Very horrible for them. But if they didn't do what they did, then truth should be able to emerge somehow to vindicate them of what has been accused of them. But that's not always true, unfortunately, too. That's the reality. Sometimes the accused, who have been lied on, get vilified. Circumstances make it look like they're guilty. They end up going through the whole process, and they didn't ever deserve it. It's possible. But I think that what's worse than that reality is a person coming to you screaming for help and you didn't believe them, and then what comes of that. So that's what I'm trying to, convey to everybody. I don't think the responsibility is for us to blindly believe everybody because anybody who accuses anybody is clearly telling the truth. I think that's irresponsible thinking, and it's an irresponsible way to convey what the responsibility of those who are listening actually should be. Irresponsibility is the way to the lesser of two evils in regards to the consequences of what could go wrong. And what's worse, in my humble opinion, is listening to somebody not believing them and then them going back to that circumstance because of it, and then something transpiring from there that further puts them in a dangerous situation. So, all you accusers out there who want to lie on people, I think in the presence of understanding my responsibility to believe you, I think the consequences for finding out that you were lying should be harsh. I think that's how you handle that. That's how you handle that. We're going to believe all accusers. When it comes out there lying, they ass go to jail for a long time. That way you cut down on people who are seeing it as a better path for them to get back at people they want to get back at by calling them abusers. Accusing them of things they had no business doing. And putting all of us in a tight spot to where we have to choose to put our skepticism for what liars are about down so that we can come to the aid of the falsely, of the person crying wolf. You make it a hell of a lot harder for people who are telling the truth about their abuse to come forward when you come out as a damn liar, trying to be vindictive or evil about what it is or however it went. So I think that that's where society also needs to get stronger, in the sense that we need to start coming down on these fake, false accusers, because it is a conundrum that a lot of people are faced with. There is a faction of individuals telling us we have to believe everybody who's coming forward, and those who are lying do a lot of damage to that environment. So that's where we need to get better as a society. You gotta start coming down on these people who lie. Come down on them hard, man. Hard time. For smearing a man's name when you're not, or a woman's name when they didn't do what it is you're saying they did. Hard time. So that's my point of view on that. But yeah, man, I think Jackson Hayes just needed to grow up. It's okay for people to condemn him for those actions. I would like some normalcy as it pertains to how we view all situations. Because the same people who are coming down on him are completely fine with genocide. And if it's happening to a Muslim woman, and if it's a Zionist Jew person doing these things, and suddenly I ain't got nothing to say. And like I'm taboo, I'm completely out of bounds or unhinged for even mentioning that in this video. That environment in and of itself eats away at the credibility of those who claim to be concerned about the victimhood of others. And you find, so long as it's a Palestinian person doing it, getting it done to them by somebody who's Zionist Jewish, then it's like, oh, well, in that case, it's okay that they're a victim because we have an excuse to call them a terrorist or whatever. So that type of thing is like real to me. I don't separate those things. I think a lot of people who run around saying that they're virtuous individuals could give a damn about things that are really happening in real life in these places. Happening to real women, happening to real children, and they got real nothing to say. But let it be Jackson Hayes doing it to somebody, and it's like, oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world. Like, nah, you hold no credibility because you hold your tongue depending on who's doing what to whom and what their status is in this world and what that status can do to you. You hold no credibility. That's my true opinion about this Jackson Hayes thing. Half the people speaking on it don't want to speak up on what's happening in real life in other places. Much worse atrocities that they're very aware of. But it's fine because it's happening over there, I guess. I don't like it. I don't think you should either. So, Jackson Hayes, man, you just got to grow up, bro. At the end of the day, grow up, bro. If you haven't already. That should be the goal, to control your emotions, accept the fact that you're a 7-foot black man, and these type of things are not acceptable in no level. And You put a lot of things at risk. Your livelihood, your reputation in the future with other women, your reputation in the future with other men who are attached to those women that you're going to want to date. Oh, you abuser? For sure. I got my eye on you in a different way. That's that kind of thing. You don't want that over your shoulder, bro. You don't want that on your name. And so a lot of y'all maybe were raised in households where your dad might have been abusive, and maybe that abuse wasn't identified as abuse. You know what I mean? Because he's daddy over the household, That same behavior that we're talking about in regards to the Zionist Jews being able to do this to the Palestinians is the same parallel that we often see in our households. It's okay for daddy to do it because daddy's the man who's bringing home the bacon. So, the depravity of the normalcy, the depraved nature of a mind cultivated in a house where it's fine to abuse mommy and abuse kids, you know what I mean? Because of who's doing it. That's the type of thing that we need to work on. It's in general. And it ain't okay for nobody to do it, no matter how much they control in this world or control in your household. If they're being abusers, then they need to be brought to justice. That's what we should be normalizing on every single level and facet, whether it's happening in your household or it's happening somewhere far away from where you live. And so I don't know what Jackson's household was growing up, but I'll tell you like this, him growing up, there should have been some things instilled in him, in my opinion, that would have made him feel like a less of a man for even behaving that way. Those are the things that should have been instilled in him as a man, whether there was a father in the house or not. Those are things that need to be instilled in each and every boy, no matter how he identifies. You should feel like absolute crap for putting your hands on a woman. You should feel like absolute crap for allowing someone else to put their hands on a woman in front of you as a man. You know what I mean? And you shouldn't want that represented on your name, that you sat back and watched that happen. That's what I think. Hello, friend. Hey, puppy. Hello. Hey. How are you today? Ain't seen you in about a year, friend. Hello. Have a good day. You know what I mean? And that's what it is for me. I just want people to understand that not only do I not condone those behaviors when anybody does it, whether it be Jackson Hayes, Ray Rice, or P. Diddy, or someone down the block, but it's been put in my heart that I should feel like crap for being in the presence of that and not stopping it. You know what I mean? For not it's saying something, doing something, getting in between that person, throwing something at that man, whatever the hell I gotta do, try to diffuse that situation. Is kind of how I was raised to handle it. And I know a lot of people think and believe and have had evidence of it being very smart to stay out of domestic situations that ain't your business. So many a man has died doing that. So he both understandings. You got to choose your battles wisely, but the way I was raised is you get in the way of that. You get in the way of that if at all possible. And if you're not able to, then that's an indictment on your character as a man. That's really what it is. I get it. Some people are just too big to deal with. What I'm gonna do if Shaq's beating up on his wife, and I see it, I'm supposed to get in between Shaq. I'm not gonna win that battle. But at the end of the day, that's kind of what it is. That's kind of what I was. If I'm not gonna do that, then I'm not respectful as of myself as a man. I've just allowed myself to be disrespected by letting another man think he can do that in my presence. That's how I was raised. It's the truth. My ego shouldn't allow for that man to be able to hit no woman in my presence. That my ego should not allow for me to sit back and put my hands on a woman if she do certain things. That's when I start feeling bad about myself. Start thinking I'm less of a man. I might as well sit down when I use the restroom type stuff. You know what I'm saying? Just eats away at my character as a man. And so, that's a real thing I think a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of things that tie into that kind of align with that. And I think that's the disconnect between certain people are part of the LGBTQ community and the perception of people hating them, particularly, and this is particularly men, straight men not having respect for gay men. It's in that ballpark a lot of times that the disconnect is found, to say that a lot of us men, if you are allowing a man to take your manhood or to engage in certain activities in that way, you are submitting yourself to that man in such a way that not only is a sexual energy, but also that for which allows you to be conquered, which is why so many people will die on the hill that they're straight when they really do engage in that type of activities. It's because it's not just that they don't want to be seen as gay. They don't want to be seen as a submitting entity to that for which is another male, which in this world, fight or flight, sink or swim, conquer or be conquered. I'd be damned if I let some man have ups on me in such a way that allows for me to kneel, so to speak, at his altar. Hell no. I might as well hand him over all of my belongings, hand him my wife, hand him my kids, and tell him I'll be a slave for the rest of my damn life. So it's like, that's what people need to understand is what makes it so offensive for a lot of us straight dudes in regards to that type of energy, or offensive for a lot of people who are in the closet. You know what I mean? And why they will go to their grave without anybody ever knowing. It's because they don't want to be seen as somebody who submit to a man, even though they like to engage in the behaviors that they deem represent that. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And so I think there's a conversation to be had there that'll help people understand how to interact with one another and accept people's differences and break down those walls of ignorance, so to speak. It's somewhere in that ballpark, man. I ain't gonna engage in those activities, or I'm not gonna let nobody put that on my name, because that's me submitting, and I ain't gonna be giving up nothing. And in no kind of way to no dude. And so that's a real thing, man. That's a real thing for a lot of people's perception and their way of looking at things. And I think a lot of people also don't understand that about others. But whatever, man. That ain't got nothing to do with Jackson Hayes. But it is a conversation. I think it's relevant as to say that, the way I was raised, a man's supposed to behave a certain way. Whether the world thinks it's normal for him to behave differently or not, he still got to uphold himself in certain ways that only a man does. And if you're not doing that, then you're less of a man. You know what I mean? Your strength is not in your spirit, and that's unfortunate, I guess, is what the idea is. So yeah, man, try to help in whatever way I can. I hope this is a conversation that can be taken constructively. We all have a long way to go in regards to how we view one another, especially if we were raised a specific way. And sometimes I think young boys are raised in circumstances where they're taught to, that they're coddled in a way. And I think that sometimes moms, especially in single parent households, sometimes can coddle a boy and make him feel, they treat him like they want to be treated. And so a boy grows up thinking that a woman's supposed to be taking care of him, or a woman is supposed to take his punch, you know what I mean, and not say nothing. And all these different types of ways that I don't know. I was raised by a single parent woman, but that wasn't how I was raised. But, they all in their feelings a lot of times, and they act like women in a lot of cases. I don't know if that's Jackson Hayes or not, but some of that energy felt that way to me. And watching the video, it's like, he didn't get socked in his chest enough, like at all. That's what I got from him. And there was a lack of self-awareness in that video to say that, he kept on saying to her, "Are you doing this because of the dog? You want me? You angry at me because of the dog?" No, she's angry at you because of your behavior, right? You know what I mean? Maybe that behavior is prompted by the conversation about a dog, but at this point, it ain't no longer about the dog. It's about you, bro. And so, self-awareness is really important for men. For everybody, especially men, in my opinion. We got to know, hey, man, sometimes our behavior can escalate a situation. Our ego can escalate a situation. It's best to just get out of there. She gave you an opportunity. She said, get in your car and leave. That's wise wisdom that you take from her in that situation, rather than to let it get as bad as it did. And now you got all these headaches. It'd probably been best for you to just bounce. especially men who have a lot to lose, man. You're a rich man, you got NBA money, NBA career. You don't need to be involved in no domestic violence situations, because that's going to cost you your career and it's going to cost you everything else. And that's not good. That's not good, man. So that's really my point of view. I just want all of us to raise our boys and raise men to understand that you do have a responsibility, regardless of how you identify, to respect yourself. And in doing so, you'll learn to not allow for certain things to happen in your presence. You will not allow certain things to be attached to your name, and you will teach others. You know what I mean? In that same way. And so that's what I believe, man. That's what I believe. Treat each other with respect, and don't provoke one another. Don't provoke one another, man. Try to diffuse problems, because you see what trickles down from simple argument and push around. This man gonna have to give up all kinds of stuff. So let's just see the fruit in keeping ourselves out of circumstances that ultimately lead to consequences that are unforeseen. And that's pretty much what I gotta say, man. My name is BDL44. I thank you all for watching, and I'm out.